and in the UK, whether you love them or hate them, you are interested in them.
This seems like it's been on the cards for some time.
I clearly didn't know firmly that they were moving here at all, anything like that, but there was clearly a push that Harry was trying to reconnect more with the UK. He has said it himself.
I think this now puts the emphasis almost back on Meghan Markle.
It's clear that they've said, right, now's the time. If they are only going to be here for a year or two, who knows?
Okay, they're not going back to royal duties.
Or even in any capacity, this half in, half out model. I don't think.
The security situation had not changed.
It would be crazy to say that that's not part of the story. What their main motivation is, I mean, only they know that.
Sources have told you that it's been one-way traffic, that Prince Harry has actually tried to communicate with Prince William.
You know, everything I've ever heard is there's just no appetite for them to get in a room together and sort it out anytime soon.
Hello, I'm Josh Rom, Associate Editor of The Royal Observer. Just a day after sources close to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex revealed that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle will be making a bombshell move back to the UK within days with their two children, Archie and Lilibet, it's now been revealed that Meghan is due to return to her acting roots as she's accepted a major new role in an upcoming UK-based project. Joining me now to discuss all of this and more is Bronte Coy, one of the journalists who revealed this world-exclusive story. Bronte Coy, welcome to the Royal Observer. Love that this is the first time we are going to be on screen together. Super exciting.
Me too. I'm so excited. This is great.
But we are literally in the middle of what can only be described, I don't want to call it a storm, because actually I think it's rather good news, but this is something you've known for a while. Congratulations, first and foremost, on all of your fantastic reporting, fantastic scoops. I mean, my first question is, this seems like it's been on the cards for some time, the fact that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have enrolled Archie and Lilibet already into local schools. My first question is not how you found out, but when you found out. When were you first told?
You raise a great point. This is the conversation I've been having with people all morning, really, is that, you know, these sorts of things don't just happen. I think the biggest bombshell for me as part of the move itself was the fact that kids were enrolled in school and it's all happening within days. These things, especially when young children are involved, speaking from experience, these things are not sort of last minute. I think that the way that it's been framed to me, you know, look, the big question is, was this something they knew when they were here last month? And that was just last month they were here and they met up with the king. You know, were there conversations going on then with the palace about this potential move? My understanding is that, and what I'm told, this is at least all I'm hearing, you know, and who knows, but basically there were a lot of ideas about the concept of this happening, but I think a lot of pieces had to fall into place for them to actually pull the trigger on making such a huge move. And I think there's a number of parts involved. It had been said to me for quite some time that Harry, you know, is missing a lot of elements of the UK, but more importantly, really wanted to embed his children more in his wider family and friends and network here in Britain, which isn't just the palace and the king and the Waleses and the ones we talk about the most, but of course it's also the Spencers and the wider cousins, you know, the Princess Eugenie and the other members of the family. So there's that element. I think that the acting gig is a surprise, but then I suppose we go back to late last year when it was announced she was doing that cameo role as herself in a big movie with Brie Larson. And I think that was the first indication that clearly there are conversations happening on the Hollywood side of things. And there is an interest from her, I suppose, to test the waters and see how she felt about returning to her roots. And this was her whole career before Harry. So look, I think there's been rumblings around, I think when things obviously have gotten to a point now where they're in, you know, either an agreement has now been made or contract negotiations are undergoing, but it is at a point now where clearly this is a massive part of why Meghan wants to be in the UK. So there is a number of elements, but her being based here to do this project, and we don't know exactly what that is yet, it sort of answers the why of why now and why would Meghan want to come back to the UK when she didn't, before we knew about this, she didn't really have a strong tie here, or there was no clear path of what she'd literally be doing day to day if they were living over here. Whereas Harry's path is quite clear. Invictus Birmingham, Well Child, Scotty's Little Soldiers. And these all made a lot of sense.
Trust, yeah.
So it's, as I say, look, it's the long way of saying there are just so many elements. And I think now with the benefit of hindsight, I can kind of see the markers along the way. We've heard the rumors. And now in the last couple of weeks, obviously a number of things fell into place.
I mean, it's so interesting because, so much of the emphasis has been on Prince Harry and wanting to come back for his family and the reconciliation, both the Spencers and the Royals, and then all of his charitable engagements and all of that sort of stuff. But I think this now puts the emphasis now almost back on Meghan Markle to see actually, okay, there is a upcoming role here. No, this isn't just about Prince Harry. This is very much both of them as a team. And actually what I would say is, despite all the, I would call it stupid speculation about their marriage, this just goes to prove the point from what both you and I have actually been saying is actually, no, the marriage has been strong despite all these ridiculous rumours coming out of the online critics, as I call them, that actually they are very much strong. They are very much
it's
operating.
It's
a partnership,
saying, yes.
And they're operating very much as a unit.
I think so too. I think you're exactly right to say that. This is a question that is put to me all the time, and especially after I came back from Australia, because I did spend a number of days with them, so to speak. Because you are
well, in their orbit.
I was embedded. Myself and one other journalist. We were traveling with them for that week, and so obviously you're watching how they interact with each other, because there has been huge scrutiny on this marriage. They're two of the most talked about people in the world, and I was curious, as everyone is. What is their dynamic? And I think that all I saw was lovey-dovey, happy. Sorry, you might hear a siren in the background. That's London living.
It's all good.
So yeah, it was, look, what I saw was a very strong dynamic and partnership. I obviously don't know what happens behind closed doors. Maybe they saved all their fights for then, but certainly from my perspective, I saw something that was a very strong relationship. And I think exactly as you say, when this story broke of them moving back here, and I have spoken on a number of shows in the last 6 months in particular about the fact that something was afoot. It felt that something was afoot. And I didn't have that on information. And I clearly didn't know firmly that they were moving here at all, anything like that. But there was clearly a push that Harry was trying to reconnect more with the UK. He has said it himself, but there have also just been massive markers all the way along the way. But I think that now with this part of the story, it all makes so much more sense. As I said, I think what my understanding from speaking to people close to Harry is that he's been toying with the idea of, as a lot of people do, you think about doing 12 months overseas, maybe getting your kids to see your homeland, that all kind of makes sense. But there obviously wasn't a specific timeline on when that would happen. But as I say, and this is purely speculative, but now knowing what we know, that this clearly a role has come up that's really excited her and that is significant enough for them to make the move, it's clear that they've said, right, now's the time. This is it. So I think it's a sign of a partnership that I suppose we all are always wondering about, but I think it is a solid sign of that.
Because you actually make a very valid point, because as well, you spoke about Australia, because what we know from the news, and especially the stories that you broke, is we know that they're not coming back to be full-time working members of the royal family. This isn't necessarily a reversal of Megxit. They're not rejoining the firm. They're not going back to royal duties. The security arrangement hasn't changed. They're still under this bespoke arrangement with Ravek that was agreed as part of the Sandringham Summit. The only thing that is changing when it comes to Megxit is that geographical aspect of it, where they're moving back to the UK. And we still don't even know if it's going to be entirely permanent. We know it's going to be for the foreseeable. That's what we know at least. But it's very interesting that you also spoke about Australia. Okay, they're not going back to royal duties. They're going to be embarking on a mixture of still very much commercial activities to kind of potentially fund their more charitable and philanthropic endeavours. That kind of model of what they would be doing, the Australian tour was almost a trial of that, wasn't it?
I think so. And everything I heard from people close to them afterwards said that. I mean, there was obviously the headlines that were generated before they got there, as there always is. There's always some level of drama, whether they're directly related to, whether it's their fault or not. Either way, there is always a drama ahead of these sorts of things. When it was about Australia, it was about the security aspect there, completely unrelated to their British security issues. It was about whether that was going to be drained on the public resources, as it was not an official visit, despite the fact that elements of it clearly looked like one. And you're right, that's the model that they then sort of trialed there, because Australia has I'm very biased, but Australia has had great significance for the royals over the years.
Well, no, of course. You say you're biased. That's with both King Charles, Princess Diana back in the day, and Her late Majesty the Queen and Prince Philip all doing huge royal tours in Australia. Of course, that country, and being a massive member of the Commonwealth, having this connection. I mean, listen, they've got the Union flag in their own flag. So
you're literally preaching to the choir. I'm like, you're right, Josh. It is top priority, but it is true.
But it is. It's a country of massive significance for the royal family.
Yes, exactly. And so I think, from speaking to people right afterwards, of course, the big question was going to be, I watched the tour, and I know we're sort of diverting from the main story here, but it's all in the context of it. I was there, and I was being told by everyone that wasn't there, which was every commentator around the world. I'm being told it's a disaster, it was a fiasco. Look, elements of it, the security stuff is an issue, because obviously this is the problem with being sort of a half in, half out model occasionally, because you can't be seen to be commercializing aspects of the monarchy. It can cheapen the brand. But the thing is that their approach, and what I was told, is that they want to be able to prop up their philanthropic work with their own, like making their own money. So they're able to fund that. So they're not making taxpayers pay for anything, or making these charities and organizations pay for them to come out, because that's how it would have to work usually. So look, for better or worse, and whether you agree with it or not, that's the model that they were trialing. And in that regard, they felt it was a really big success. And I was in the room at the places they were going, in the hospital, and when Harry met with Invictus, members of the Invictus community, and met with veterans. Those people in those communities with these areas of work that Harry's been in for decades, they love him. He loves them. It was an incredibly warm and inviting atmosphere, and that's all I saw for that time. And I know there are complications about their role, because they're sort of in a royal no man's land. There's not really anyone that you can compare it to, or a blueprint they can follow. So they're trying to work it out themselves, and they've made huge mistakes along the way. But also, as I say, they're trying to work it out. And I think that you are right to say that was a bit of a dummy run. I think that with Meghan returning to acting when she gets here, I also wouldn't be surprised if she picks up, goes back to maybe she was working with SmartWorks when she was here previously. Charities like that, sort of doing that kind of work as well while here, but again, propping it up with their own money. They're not, from my understanding, there's no plan for them to return as working royals, or even in any capacity this half in, half out model. I don't think anyone, including the palace, is expecting or thinks that would be something that would work out. But yes, I think, sorry, to all of that to say, I do think that we have seen steps along the way of what we could now be looking at into the future as the sort of Sussex model.
Yeah. And listen, what people also forget is, with the king's health, we don't know how much longer he has left on the planet. When William does become king, attention will shift onto him, and then undoubtedly attention will shift onto Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis as they grow up, and less attention will be put on the Sussexes and Archie and Lilibet. So they're still trying to kind of figure it out, albeit on the world stage. And, attention will eventually wane on them. So from their point of view, they probably see themselves as people or similar status, like Princess Beatrice, like Princess Eugenie, Zara Tyndall, for example, that have to make their own way in the world whilst still just representing the royal family on occasion, I guess.
I think that people always speak in absolutes, and actually the Sussexes are a little bit guilty of this too. But people always speak in absolutes when it comes to them. And it's like, if I try to view any aspect of it as a half glass full situation, you sort of get roasted for that. You know what I'm talking about online.
Oh, yeah.
Which I'm fine with. But, if you view it through that lens, there's always going to be that backlash. But at the same time, I think that a number of things can be true at once. I don't understand why it has to be in such absolutes. I think looking at this objectively, and from what we're seeing happen, I think a number of things are true. America has not worked out how they thought it would. They have not fallen in love with the careers and plans that are happening over there. I think they really like it. I know they love Montecito as an area. And I know that Harry loves, being able to go out and surf and the community there. But I don't think it's become, it wasn't exactly as they planned it or tried out in the initial years. And that's true. We've seen it. The deals didn't work out how they thought. It's obviously not going to be able to fund them forever. So there's that aspect. Harry really misses aspects of the UK. He really wants to have a closer relationship with his father, and geographically that plays a big role. And with the Spencers, that's a really important part, and the broader family. And I think that Meghan is now looking at her next options, and she wants to be, as we say, going back into acting. But all of that can be true. And we can also say they're not stupid. We're not stupid. Being in closer proximity to the crown, and in the UK, whether you love them or hate them, you are interested in them. That is the answer here. And that is not the case anywhere else. America was interested, but it is becoming less so, because there are a million celebrities over there. It's the proximity to the crown. So all of these things can be true. We can have the cynical elements of it being accurate. We're aware their brand is stronger if they're closer to the royals. Of course it is. We know that. They know that. It would be crazy to say that that's not part of the story, but I don't, whether that, what their main motivation is, I mean, only they know that. But I do think that it's always good to be able to iron out all the threads of this, because it does feel like so often this is the reason, this is the reason. And I think that when Meghan's acting news came through, for me, that is such a big part of the puzzle, because otherwise, and the big cynic in me goes, well, but what are you going to do here? Maybe you are edging back towards sort of being, an adjacent part of the royal family. Maybe that is your only motivation. Whereas now I'm like, I can see that there is a much broader picture here. Do you know what I mean?
No, 100%, because I think that's what confused everyone so much is, whilst we saw Harry and the King on a path to reconciliation and the private tea at Highgrove and both sides staying largely quiet, at the same time, the security situation had not changed. The privacy arrangements haven't changed. There's been so much of this which just hasn't changed, which is why I think the news of, they're coming back in days, just confused so many commentators. Yes. So it's exactly as you said, Meghan Markle having this role, having this project is a huge piece of that, because finally we can say, oh, that actually does make sense, because that is the life of a travelling actor as well.
It's the why now, right? And because the other part that's quite sinister, and I completely understand why, is that my first thought is the King dying.
100%. And I think something that all of us commentators, we cannot speculate, because it would be crude, is the King's health worse than we being led to believe? And I think it would be unfair to scrutinise that. But you do make a valid point. But I think a valid point of it as well is we actually don't know the time that he has long left on the planet. He himself has said in speeches that he doesn't see a long-term future for himself on the planet. So it's understandable why, one, Prince Harry would want to make the most out of seeing the time left with his father that he does have, and B, why he would want his children to also get to know their grandfather on a personal level too.
Absolutely. And as someone who has a 5-year-old child, I can also see, and I moved him to the other side of the world when he was quite young. I can see that if this is something, as I say, that has been in Harry's mind I think it was probably like all of us, maybe he fantasized about this idea, maybe one day we'll be able to make this work. But if you are going to do it, it often is a really good idea to do it when the children are young enough that they don't put down, if they are only going to be here for a year or two, who knows? But if they don't have their community of friends in school, etc., it's easier when they're younger, because they don't have those as strong a ties. Whereas when they're getting older through school, you really don't want to uproot them as much. And sometimes people have to, but I'm just saying all of this, as parents, they would have that in their mind as well. And exactly as you say, it's crude to speculate about the King's health, of course, and he has so bravely spoken about it, the fact that he revealed his cancer journey at all. We're very grateful for the fact that he has shared what he has shared. But of course, when this came about, because of the fact we've been following that journey, it is the first thing you think is like, what do we not know about the King's health? Now, I'm told there's no change on that front whatsoever, that's not it. I'm not his doctor. I have no idea. There's no other, I have no idea what's in those documents, but that's what we're told, that it's not that. And again, as you say, because of the timing of this acting return, this makes more sense in terms of sort of easing that speculation. And I think that's probably part of why it's good that it's come out now, that we've started hearing about it, because it does. There was yesterday, for that 24-hour period, the speculation, and because we didn't know, people didn't have the information. So it's not a criticism to say people were speculating, why are they coming back? What is the reason? But this, as we say, that kind of fills that vacuum a little bit more, and will hose down some of the more sinister theories that are floating around.
One final point, though, is because we, of course, talk about family. One last stumbling block along the way for the Sussexes, and especially when we look at Archie and Lilibet, is little Uncle William. Putting it in that way. Of course, the Prince and Princess of Wales, sources have told you that it's been one-way traffic, that Prince Harry has actually tried to communicate with Prince William, but he hasn't actually received anything back. Prince William, understandably hurt, not just for the damage of the institution, for the damage that was done in the Oprah interview and Harry and Meghan docuseries, but I think most importantly in Harry's memoir, Spare, the deep personal resentments, the private information that was revealed. What more can you tell me about that?
I think that anyone would understand William's position on this. I've certainly, having those sorts of things aired without really a public right of reply. That's incredibly difficult, and also came, just before Catherine's cancer diagnosis. So what, my understanding is that when Catherine's health battles began, that's their whole focus. They were keeping the monarchy together. He was looking after his wife. He was managing, their children having to deal with this. I think that has all put an even bigger gap between any sense of, well, then a top priority is speaking to Harry. And I think that there's no, everything I've ever heard is there is just no appetite for them to get in a room together and sort it out anytime soon. Does that change when Harry's here? Possibly. It does. The proximity and the fact there will be a lot of headlines every time they're a few miles from each other, which is going to happen now. That will be then, it will potentially make a situation where, even from a business sense, the business of monarchy, that they will have to make some sort of a truce or agreement. In terms of Harry reaching out to William, and as I say, I got this from people close to Harry a while ago. They weren't able to provide the exact timeline, or they wouldn't provide the timeline of when this was. So I'm not sure when his last attempts were. And it's possible that, with the knowledge that he is moving back here, and he is putting pressure on William and Catherine in that way. Of course, Harry has the right to live his own life and make his own decisions, and this is his home country as well. But he would have to know that with everything that's happened, he's putting a lot of pressure on his brother, who has allowed the Atlantic Ocean to keep them separated for some time. And so maybe there will be a different approach or a picking up of those efforts once he's here. So we'll have to wait and see. I think this is, of course, one of the big questions, is what happens with William and Harry. What happens at Christmas? Sandringham is only a few months away, and everyone's going to be wondering whether the King will invite everyone. If I was a betting person, I'd say the King will invite everyone, and William and Catherine will spend it with Middletons. That's a guess. I have that on no authority. That is pure speculation.
Pure speculation. Yeah.
But this is what it's going to be. When they arrive, this is now going to be the conversations. Family events, big family events, Harry and Meghan invited. Did they decline? Has the King invited them? Will William be attending? What does William think of it? This is the world that I think all the key players will be very aware that this is the world they're now stepping into. The game has completely changed. The players now have to adjust accordingly.
Because from your perspective, from what your sources are saying, is there appetite from Harry's side for a reconciliation with his brother as well? There
was clearly a desire to make things right, or at least get the lines of communication open again. That's clear, and he made several attempts. But in terms of the ongoing, he said this himself, I would like a reconciliation with my family. He specifically spoke about the King, but he actually said my family as well, which clearly more broadly means the ones he's not speaking to, which only leaves really Kate, William, and at that point Camilla, although we now know he's met up with her.
But then also, I think there is also speculation about Beatrice and Eugenie as well.
Well, he's always had a good relationship with Eugenie. There was speculation that he'd fallen out with Eugenie, but look at the fact that they have this Portugal property, which is in the same resort complex as Eugenie and her husband. So that in itself, I think that kind of puts it to bed largely. And they also spent time there over summer. So I think that there was a lot of back and forth on that. But the fact that they've literally got a holiday home in the same area. And of course, Eugenie has young kids. And this is part of that whole wider family thing, and about that network. There are a lot of other members of the family involved, outside of just the Wales children. So yes, look, Josh, it's very much a watch and act and wait and see. And I think the circus is rolling into town next week, and I cannot wait to see how this all unfolds. We're going to be very busy.
Yes, we are. Well, Bronte Coy, thank you so much for joining us here on the Royal Observer. Congratulations on your exclusives. It has been an absolute pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you, Josh.